This is a serious question. The godmother of your daughter, Shirley MacLaine, writes in her new book that you sighted a UFO over her home in Washington State, that you found the encounter extremely moving, that it was a triangular craft, silent and hovering, that if you felt a connection to your heart and heard directions in your mind. Now, did you see a UFO?
I did, and the rest of the account, I didn't. It was unidentified flying object. Okay, it's like it's unidentified. I saw something. Wait, we're just getting started here.
No. I mean, we have about 14% of Americans say they have seen UFOs. I'm going to move.
What was the percentage?
14%.
What was that percentage?
14.
Thank you.
When we had your husband, President Clinton, on this show, he said, I asked him about UFOs in Area 51, and if he looked in, because if I was president, that's the first thing I do. I go right into those files and see what was going on.
Right.
And he said that he did do that.
Yes.
And that he didn't find anything.
Well, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, why not?
Right? And you know, there's a new name. It's unexplained aerial phenomenon.
Unexplained aerial phenomenon,
Yep,
really?
Yep, UAP. That's the latest nomenclature.
I like the old one. I like UFO. I don't know why.
Well, I think we can use them interchangeably, but I would like us to go into those files and hopefully make as much of that public as possible. If there's nothing there, let's tell people there's nothing there.
What if there is something there?
Well, if there is something there, unless it's a threat to national security, I think we ought to share it with the public.
Well, what if everybody's all hopped up on medical marijuana and everybody gets paranoid? I would love it.
That's why I want more research.
I also wondered if you saw that New York Times story yesterday about Mrs. Clinton promising to get to the bottom of the UFO and Area 51 conspiracies. And I wondered if the president would like to beat her to the punch by, showing his degree of transparency on this issue, which is of concern to a lot of Americans.
Yeah. I have to admit that I don't have a tab in my briefing book for Area 51 today.
Or a joke.
Or a joke. Maybe it has. Part of a grand conspiracy. I'm not aware of any plans that the president has to make public any information about this, but
does he feel he's gotten to the bottom of it?
Well, I know that he has joked publicly before about one of the benefits of the presidency is having access to that information. I don't know whether or not he has availed himself of that opportunity, but if we have more on this, we'll let you know.
At night, under cover of darkness?
Potentially.
I wouldn't put it past this government that a cosmic Watergate has been underway for the last, 25 years. And at the same time, I don't think it's, I think as we're growing up, or from the government's point of view, I think we've been adults for hundreds of years, but from the government's point of view, we're still growing up, and eventually they might want to tell us something about what they've discovered over the decades. There is a rumor that was in U.S. News and World Report a number of months ago that Jimmy Carter might make some unsettling disclosures about the UFO phenomena sometime in December. It's perfect timing. I opened my movie in December, so it's perfect timing.
The right to speak and the right to print without the right to know are pretty empty. So I believe that the notion of open government, freedom of information, the fundamental tenets of the Freedom of Information Act are really part and parcel of our First Amendment rights. I think it's time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it really because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law. So there are these cases in which documents haven't been made available to the American public. The American public, as Bonnie noted, is quite skeptical about the fact that the government won't make them available for public inspection. These are records that are more than 25 years old. They ought to be declassified. They ought to be released. And we ought to be able to see for ourselves what's included in those documents.
former senator and one-time presidential candidate Mike Gravel, who represented the great state of Alaska for 22 years. Senator, what got you involved in this particular hearing?
I thought it would be an opportunity for me to become very knowledgeable about this subject, which is probably the most significant subject in our entire civilization, because it juxtaposes whether or not there's a force out there that we can identify with these sightings of saucers, you call it, whatever, and that force is observing the planet. And I've now, after the testimony and the research that I've done, I think that this hearing is extremely worthwhile, and there's no question about it, because this is a global issue, not just an American issue. The American government is the one that's most irresponsible in handling the subject, but it's a global issue, and we should have the United Nations, the General Assembly, form an agency and have a global conference of scientists that would focus on the issues involved. And since this thing is of planetary import, the people of the world should know what's going on.
My name is Victor Vigiani, and I am the news director for the Zealand Communications News Network here in Toronto. Two videos, two very, very clear videos taken by an F-A-18 jet at about 25,000 feet. And they captured an object in their gun camera, very sophisticated gun camera equipment. They captured an object in the middle of their screen, which seemed to be doing something very, very strange. First of all, the main point about it is this: whatever this thing was, whatever this object was, it had no flight characteristics that they understood. It had no flight wings or ailerons or anything like that. It was just some sort of object that was doing a few different things and moving very quickly in the sky. It's the one thing that they really saw first. And the other thing that happened was, that really impressed me, was in both videos, the first one was with a bit of commentary by the pilots, who are trained observers. They were totally stunned by what they were seeing. And then in the second video, what I remember most clearly about it, they've got it locked into their sights on their radar or the FLIR. And it's quite clear that this object does certain things, and all of a sudden it just shoots off to the left really quickly at absolutely blinding speed, and leaving the pilots totally stunned by what they saw. It's not just some piece of footage that, you know, Frank and Edna on their back porch caught, and oh look, there's something up in the sky. We're talking about at 25,000 feet, this thing moving at 120 knots, captured on their gun camera, makes it very, very unique and very substantive, and very, as far as I'm concerned, potentially very historically important, because we're seeing this stuff being captured by the most sophisticated camera equipment available on these extremely sophisticated jets. So the authentication process as to how this stuff happened makes this thing very, very real. Now, what it is, that's another question.
I have here in front of me 11 documents. I call them the Runnick files, and they are directly from NORAD, indicating that over the last 5 years, an average of 1,800 tracks of interest with 75 intercepts this is directly from the commander in NORAD, with 75 intercepts. I have the documents here. I also have documents relating to UFOs that have been found by the RCMP. I also have an air traffic control report that references Mr. Hellier's indication that 2 CF-18s chased 3 UFOs in 2001 out of Comox Air Force Base at 35,000 feet and gained contact with these UFOs at 35,000 feet with no gun camera information. I also have Intelligence Committee reports from the Joint Intelligence Committee here in Canada stating that what we need to do is go in a parallel system with the United States Air Force and play down UFOs at all costs. And I have those 11 documents here. And I might add that in reference to the NORAD document, I have been threatened with indictment if I release this file. And I have it here, and I'm making it public. And it talks about any distribution of this kind of information threatens national security, and in addition to the Espionage Act of the United States. I'm hereby releasing it to you. I have 11 copies here. And I dare the United States government to charge me